What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Go Long Show. Go Long at golongtd.com. So great to have you listening wherever you do listen or watch. Hopefully, it's right here at Go Long. We're also on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and the podcast fueled by our good friends at Fatty Beer Company. They're everywhere here in Western New York, Orchard Park, Hamburg, Kenmore, Tonawanda, downtown, Rochester. Always a good time to get into a fatty, grab a bee. I mean, Jim, I know you're not really into it as much at
I
all
miss it.
anymore. You miss it.
I
You don't
miss it.
drink,
I don't drink.
but it
I
is
miss it.
it's a seasonal time of year. I know everybody's kind of putting out their Kolsch like
You,
brew, but Fatty has many options for you.
that's what I said. That's my hardest thing when we do our stuff at Fatty. It's like you go in there and see, when you're trying, when you say you're not drinking anymore, and then you see that menu, that draft menu is always changing. That always gets me because that's where you go right at Fatty.
Good time to get drunk on some NFL football teams right now. The hype is out of control in some markets because that's how it works. I was just thinking it's been 5 years since myself and just about everybody went all in on the Cleveland Browns and Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and Baker Mayfield and Freddie Kitchens. Good times. I was just a little off on that one, but yes, good to be back here in
Wasn't
Western New York here with you, Jim.
wasn't just you, Tyler. It's good to have you back. I know you're down in the southeast and the south, whatever Texas is, west, southwest. Um, I miss, I was down in the southeast myself a couple of weeks ago. I miss that heat. I know I don't know to talk about weather, but when I hear the southeast, I always miss it. When when you wake up in the morning, you just walk out and it just hugs you in the morning. Like it just, you just get that warmth right away. You don't need time to warm up in the South.
This is true. And you know what? One of the mornings down there in Jacksonville, it started innocently enough, actually. It started at Starbucks, picking up a coffee. Their computers were down, so the gentleman there at the cashier said, "Hey, the coffee's on us." It was about 5:45 a.m. Made my way over to Jaguars HQ and met with a player. I don't want to give too much away. You know how I am with that all, but it was a phenomenal conversation with one of their best players, and I cannot wait to share all of these stories over the coming weeks and months. This time of year, Jim, it's just so great to travel around. Players have time on their side so they can sit down and share their journeys a bit at length. And several teams were very accommodating with requests and guys want to do that. Like that's the whole purpose of Go Long at the site, right? Like sit down, beyond the sound bites and the podium and really dig into some substance here. So several players were unbelievable sharing their stories. So met with a player there with the Jags. I might as well get right into it. I know I wrote about it, but it was just crazy, Jim. I mean, it was insane that particular day in Florida. It's kind of on me too, right? Like the ingenious idea of driving 5+ hours down and then 5+ hours back in the same day with the rental car because the flight, I mean, to rent a car and leave it down in South Florida and then fly from there back to Buffalo.
The one-way rental.
It was insane. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
out of
the one-way
control.
rental can get you right.
Yeah. But yeah, on the way down, it was relatively calm. There was one car that was flipped on its head and split in half in the
Of
middle of
course.
the I-95 toward Fort Lauderdale, but I've been told that's the norm. That's a typical Tuesday down there. So yeah, another great conversation with a Dolphins player. Get back into the car, drive back north. Gonna head back to Jacksonville. Fly out. I think at like 5:30 a.m. And it was right around Melbourne. I'm on the phone talking to my buddy Michael Cohen, who replaced me at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel to cover the Packers. We went to college together. We hadn't talked in forever, so it was great catching up. You just hear a pop, and I said a curse word very loudly. Thank God there was nobody around me. For those listening that have been on the I-95, they know it's NASCAR. You could be going 80, 85 and feel like you're crawling. So I was able to safely get off, call my AAA, assuming that there's a spare tire in this car, right? Of course there is. Every car has a spare tire. And I couldn't even really check everything because the traffic was that insane. I didn't necessarily want to be walking all around my car, which, oh, by the way, a couple years ago when we were in Jacksonville, maybe readers remember this story. Lavisca Chenault, when he was a receiver, that's how his dad died. Something happened with their vehicle. Lavisca was just a kid, and he's sitting in the front row. He sees all this happen. He witnesses it. His dad walks around the car. He's struck by a car and is killed. So yeah, didn't necessarily want to investigate for the spare tire. AAA comes out, and I kind of was able to shimmy the car over by a light pole. It looks like I smashed into the light pole. So people are probably wondering what the hell's going on here. They come out, they say, "Hey, you don't have a spare tire, man." And I told them it was a Hertz rental, and they said, "Wow, that's on Hertz. You've got to call them. Call Hertz roadside." I did. Man, I could tell this story for hours on end, and this isn't what people tuned in for. So I'll try to keep it brief. But Hertz set up one towing company, Jim, via AAA, and there was no like tracking device, no way to see or where they are or how far they'd be. It was just like sit in your car and wait. And they said it'd be about 90 minutes. That 2 hours pass. So I call Hertz back, and they said, "Oh, well, they got in touch with them, and they said I wasn't even on their radar, that they were backed up." So they had another option for X amount of dollars, which, man, if that fee pops up, I'm going to have a word with Hertz. It hasn't quite yet. And a lot of money to get another towing truck out there. And the guy was amazing, from Trinidad and Tobago, had his son with him. Great conversation. They saved my butt in a dozen different ways, but they had a lot on their plate, so it took them a while to get out themselves. So it was about 5.5 hours of just sitting on the side of I-95 with the flashers on, head on a swivel, hoping nobody drifts off the road and smashes into you. Pitch black. Like I wrote, there's a possum, a second possum. They come over, hang out with me by the woods. It's creepy. Yeah, I don't think you really realize in the moment like how unsafe that situation really is. You're just trying to just stay calm and patient and wait. And it was 2:05 a.m. that they arrived and picked up the car. I had to kind of like talk them into let me squeeze into the tow truck in the front to like bring me the 55 miles to the Orlando airport. The yard was near there, but unbelievable human beings. Gives me faith in humans in general. Just drive me right up to the rental car, right up by where the spikes are, where if you go over it, you can't go back in a tow truck. I mean, this guy's unbelievable. Drops me off, give him a tip. I don't know how in the hell he got out of there. Austin Powers situation, a million 3-point turns, I'm sure. And then, got a car in Orlando, drove back to Jacksonville 2.5 hours, drank some shitty racetrack gas station coffee. This is the best part though, Jim, I promise. So I finally sleep, 6 a.m. And I had to cancel the flight, by the way, along the way.
Oh,
I had to cancel that flight, push that back to later in the day. So that's fun. Paying for a new flight back as well. But I get a call from the first tow truck at 6:30. So I wake up in an absolute haze. And the guy's like, "Hey, I'm here to pick you up." What? Who are you? What's going on? I said, "No, I had a second tow truck come and get me." But so that would have been fun. I would have been there till 6:30, 7 a.m. if I just stuck with the original. So I guess a word for the kids out there: if you're renting a car, make sure there's a spare tire in it. And if you're waiting on a tow truck or waiting on anything, just be proactive, because that wouldn't have been fun waiting even longer than it did.
Tyler, it's funny when you tell these stories because, first of all, you said you don't understand how frightening and dark it is out there until you're out there and not moving in a car. You're just passing through at night. You don't really realize how dark things are out there. The next thing is, I always said, as college scouts, you're very close to being a truck driver, and you experience a little bit of what college scouts. I can promise you, every single one of us has that story where we needed AAA and we thanked the guy. They are your favorite.
Oh my
you
God.
Don't realize, right? I love your reaction, because it's like until you go through it, now you realize the value of it. Especially as we have kids and as they get older and they travel, we're gonna be like, look,
Yeah.
Triple A, you need it, whatever it is. For Hertz not to have a spare for you, that's bad. You should not. I hope they don't charge you for anything for that.
I did talk to somebody at the counter at Hertz like the next day about the spare tire. Like what the hell? And she said that like that is a trend that they're a lot of their cars don't have spare tires because people steal them or wear them out. I don't know if I believe that, but maybe the best part of the whole story I didn't even mention is at one point at like 1:30 a.m. A cop car came up behind me to check on me because I got my flashers on for 5 hours in a row. They're probably wondering what the hell. And I thought it was the tow truck that pulled up behind me. So I get out of my car, which is a big no-no when you get pulled over by the cops. So can't imagine what was going through his head. Thankfully, he couldn't have been cooler. Like he came over, just checked on me, said, "Hey, you've been hanging here for a bit, and it looks like you smashed into this light pole. So we just wanted to check on you." And ended up talking about football. Of course, he's a Jets fan, so talked to some Aaron Rodgers, which is inevitable. And his partner came around the other side, shined a flashlight in the car, like all they saw was a computer bag and probably a a couple empty coffee cups. And then they took off. It was wild and definitely moves into the number one slot on the crazy sports writing road trip power rankings. It previously, so we've got Bob McGinn here at Go Long. At the Journal Sentinel, myself, Bob, and Tom Silverstein, we'll never forget this. After covering a Packers Bears game once, that highway that goes right by the stadium. I can't even think what it is. People fly on it. We were driving and Tom was at the wheel of our rental and he went to kind of move into the center lane. It wasn't really his fault. But this guy came like a bat out of hell behind us, this huge ass truck. And I remember sitting in the back right seat, turning over and just like my life flashing before my eyes. I thought we were going to hit this guy. It was that close, a couple inches from just total disaster. So that's moving to the number 2 slot. But this probably all pales in comparison as a scout. I mean, you're going
No,
all over the country for 15 years.
it doesn't pale in comparison. It's just we all have those stories we can relate. You said the computer bag, the coffee cups, empty coffee cups. That's scouts. That's what we had. We had our laptop bag and empty coffee cups. Promise you. So it's like you did it. You're a scout. I mean, you bump it. Hey, you're going to different teams. You're living that life. But it is. It gives you. It puts you. It humbles you quick. Like
Oh, yeah.
a lot. Like you're like, man, what am I gonna do if nobody comes? Like, where am I going?
Seriously, though, I mean, I wasn't just cheesing. I really meant it what I wrote. Like this
Yeah.
entire time, it was a sense of like, this is amazing, too. I mean, to travel and sit down with these players and try to deliver stories worth people's valuable time here at Go Long. It was 1,000,000% worth it. I can't thank everybody out there enough for subscribing, for reading. Can't wait to share, like I said, what we got down there and in Houston. Spent a little time around the Texans, so we'll probably touch on that this podcast as well. Uh, but yeah, probably the segue into today's topic is as I'm flying to Houston, my wife calls me and says, "You got the craziest letter in the mail from Avis Rent-A-Car." And she read it to me and sent the screenshot. So that was in January, right ahead of the Cowboys game. I think that's when I sat down with Romeo Dobbs and Jonathan Owens for some stories in Green Bay. I mean, that's a whole other crazy story. I landed there, my car wasn't ready, so I had to get one at Avis at like 1 a.m. and drive up from Milwaukee to Green Bay. A letter comes from Avis, says, "Hey, Tyler Dunn, just wanted to let you know we're charging you $450 because we had to clean your rental car due to animal hair." I'm like, what? Animal hair was exactly like picking up dogs and cats while covering Green Bay. So they had the wrong guy and gave Avis a call and they understood and waived the fee. But I want to talk about Green Bay today a little bit because we got a lot of Packer fans here at Go Long, obviously, who read, who listen. We haven't really discussed Jordan Love in quite some time, which is strange here in the Go Long world. It was go Jordan Love there for a little bit, right? I mean, we kind of got behind this guy a long time ago. At least I did. And his skill set, his mental toughness, his ability to step into the shoes of Aaron Rodgers and picked up where he left off and then some. The hype machine, like we said, it's real everywhere you look with every team. God, I just was watching like some Tennessee Titans stuff, and they're talking up Traylon Burks' special teams ability, right? Like
Wow.
Chase Claypool here in Buffalo. Look out.
Well, that's
A
the
lot of
yeah.
players in a lot of cities. This is the time of year. But yes, the Jordan Love pandemonium is reaching its May turn June turn July fever pitch here. Mike Tannenbaum, former NFL GM, said he'd take Jordan Love after Patrick Mahomes. Right? It's you've got Devontae Adams just wide eyed. Sure sounds like he wishes he would have stuck around Green Bay, and he didn't know that Jordan Love was going to become this. But it's probably a little bit more nuanced than everything we hear. And I want to just, I don't know, give you the floor here to start, Jim. I mean, this is a quarterback who threw for over 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, really turned it on in mid-November because there was a point there. Don't forget, Brian Gutekunst, the Green Bay Packers general manager who drafted Jordan Love, who took that massive risk. Right? You've got Aaron Rodgers who still wants to play, and he's going to be pissed off, and he's going to pour that tequila, and he's going to try to demean and defame and slander you and work his minions locally, nationally, put it out there. He's got to get fired for me to come back the summer of 2021. It got ugly. It got very ugly. But I'm sure he knew that was a possibility. He stands by him. Even after giving Aaron Rodgers a contract extension, it becomes time to turn the page. He turns the page. Love does what he does. Even Gutekunst, mid-season, says in so many words, pressure's on, dude. I'm paraphrasing, but time to step up. They had to know through November and December and January, if there was a January, if this is the future. And Jordan Love played arguably better than any quarterback in the NFL up until that interception in Santa Clara. So what do you make of Jordan Love's first year as a starter, Jim? Because look, now it's time. This is the downside of the upside in letting a quarterback sit for 3 years, right? You kind of hedged it last year contractually, but now it's either you pay him 50 plus million a year. We can talk about those numbers, or you just find a new quarterback. I mean, Jordan Love played himself into that market with what he did and the state of trying to find a quarterback in the modern NFL. What did you see in Jordan Love? When you look back and you look at the film and you look at the ups, the downs, how did he perform?
So I like how you described it as far as it was a point in the season where Gutekunst was a little not concerned, but okay, let's see what we invested in here. Let's get some production. And it clicked because it was on a fine line where he was looking he just looked like a young court. He just looked like a first year starter. It wasn't, to me, it wasn't concerning, but it wasn't jumping out like he's going to be this guy. Then it turned on, he got hot, finished the season strong. And now he's the second best quarterback. Everything's great. And this is where you and I were talking about, we just need to find a way this time of year to calm things down a little bit. The difference between becoming a great quarterback or you were a hot quarterback is where Love is at. He got hot, and you saw the highlight plays. You saw and we talk about on here, the big boy grown man type ability that he has. So that there's almost no ceiling with his ability to make those types of throws. Where I need to see him improve is give me the easy throws. Do the easy, get into a rhythm, make the easy things, and don't always make it so hard if you have to. And it's not always about getting out of trouble. It's about seeing things quick. And I think he gets away with some questionable decision-making throws that come down in their favor that you don't want to that you can't make a living on. And I think that's where I'm at with Green Bay. I don't know. I'm not saying they're not. We all know they're going to be one of the top teams competing for. Obviously, they have goals to get to the Super Bowl. But when you look at their division improved. It went from a pretty, it was a kind of a shaky, just crazy division last year to this division has some stability right now. The Bears are feeling pretty good about where they're at. the Vikings like what they've done in the, everybody likes where they're at in the offseason, but when you actually look at what these teams have done, they have made some significant, and we know about Detroit. Detroit's the elite right now in that division. And Green Bay's got a knock on their door, but behind them, these aren't going to be easy games anymore. Not that they were ever easy. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not counting on Green Bay just to be what Mike Tannenbaum's saying or what everybody's saying. I'm not counting on Green Bay just saying they're going to be right there again. I need to see consistency from Jordan Love and make the plays, make the every down plays. He wasn't making blow up turnovers. And when you don't do that, you're giving yourself a chance. So for a first year starter, he just to me jumped out off the charts as far as success, winning, production. He did all that. Now you got to do it again. You're a hot quarterback right now. Now you become consistent. You got to do it again. That's when you enter Josh Allen, Burrow, Lamar. Yeah. We've seen it every year from them. I'm not going to talk about Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. They've done it forever.
That's why that throw across his body, across the field was so out of character and so strange to see, because you really didn't see that a lot out of Jordan Love. It was like all of a sudden he becomes Brett Favre in that playoff moment, right? He just a bad case of hero ball at the worst possible time, when all you really needed to do was just nickel and dime your way down the field at that point. So it's hard to get back to that game because of what you just said. Look at the division itself. I'm with you. I think this is the best division in the NFL with respect to the AFC North and the AFC South, which is going to be really fun. But Detroit loading up. Detroit basically did everything that the Dallas Cowboys should have done. I mean, with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, just lock up Jared Goff, lock up Amon-Ra St. Brown, lock up Penei Sewell. These are players that you have developed, that you believe in, that are perfect for everything you're. I mean, offensively, they are fine. And Ben Johnson sticking around as the OC isn't the worst thing. But I like what they did on defense. I think that the secondary, it can only get better. I mean, you're not going to have, was it Kindle Vildor one-on-one with Brandon Ayuk in the NFC Championship game. I mean, he's going to be your fourth or fifth corner now, with trading for Carlton Davis, drafting the best cornerback in the draft, Terrion Arnold. Brian Branch is going to be a star. This guy is all over the field. I guess I say that because of a conversation with Will Anderson down there in Houston. He said, man, back at Alabama, Saban was on his ass, Branch, because he believed in him. Like, he knew this guy is going to be special early. So, yeah, Detroit's going to be good. Chicago, we've talked about Caleb Williams and everything that they've got going on there. Even Minnesota, right? I mean, who knows what happens with J.J. McCarthy, but, I mean, you could not ask for a better situation to break in, a young quarterback. Now you've got Justin Jefferson locked up long-term, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson. Hello, Aaron Jones. So, you know what, though? I still think Green Bay can win the division, can win the NFC, can win the damn Super Bowl, because look at their situation around Jordan Love last year, Jim. And I get it. He's not a rookie technically because he was waiting for 3 years. I mean, this is the formula that more teams should adopt. Atlanta's going to give it a shot now. But he really was a rookie in terms of playing on game day. And David Bakhtiari, your left tackle, one of the richest linemen in NFL history, he plays all of 55 snaps. Okay? So he's gone. He's done. Aaron Jones, he came on like gangbusters at the end of the season, but he only played, 32.3% of the snaps last year. Your most talented player on offense. And then Christian Watson, he's locked in as the number one, in theory, big, fast, second-round pick. He played 40% of the snaps. So he had all those hamstring issues. So it was a lot of Dontavian Wicks, a lot of Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, obviously, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. They were piecing this passing game together with first and second year guys, and we've all for the first time. So I think you're going to see realistic growth into next season with a group that can only be healthier, can only be better. And oh, by the way, you swap out Aaron Jones for somebody who's 3.5 years younger and Josh Jacobs. The defense, you have a new coordinator now. You've got Xavier McKinney at safety. You do the right thing in the draft. Just take a lineman in the first round. protect Jordan Love. I like, obviously, where this is going for Love. I ain't backing down from that anytime soon. I don't know if I'd go to the Mike Tannenbaum extreme. I mean, there is a quarterback in Cincinnati who's pretty damn good named Joe Burrow. There's one here in Buffalo who's pretty damn good named Josh Allen. But in the NFC, with the Dallas Cowboys really not interested in winning, I suppose. And, Caleb Williams could be a stud, but it might take a little time. San Francisco, I mean, how many times can this team get to the precipice of a championship, lose, and keep coming back? It's wide open, man. I mean, no Aaron Donald with the Rams. I could easily see Green Bay getting right back to that position in the divisional round. Maybe they're even playing at Lambeau Field and winning that game.
I could see Green Bay doing that, and I can also see them not making the playoffs. And that's how critical Jordan Love is. And we can flip flop Jacobs and Jones, and we can go through. And I think how we feel about. We talk about nonstop on this pod, but it's going to come down to Jordan Love taking that next step of being consistently a star. That's what Josh Allen. That's what Mahomes. All these guys, Rodgers. They do it every week. Yeah, everybody has a bad game, but they're on an elite. They're carrying their teams almost weekly. They're ready to do it. And now Love's going to prove if he's ready to do this again, because things change after you get on defensive coordinator's radar for the first time.
Yes.
We all know
you've got a full off season. You've got 6-7 months.
They haven't really paid attention. Jordan Love wasn't on Jim Schwartz's radar. You like get Jim Schwartz, give Jim Schwartz a couple hours, and he's going to find some weaknesses in anybody. But my point is, it's going to get tougher. So this is going to be a good year to really dig into Jordan Love, as far as, okay, we saw the good, we saw some of the shaky, but that's expected as a first year starter. Now take your step to prove you're the guy.
That's a great point. And we don't talk about that nearly enough. When a young quarterback just looks great, and then all of these defensive minds have a full off season to slide you under the microscope and find weaknesses in your game that you might not even know exist. And then things get a lot harder. We mentioned the Browns earlier. I mean, think about Baker Mayfield as a rookie, how good he looked. That's why they kept Freddie Kitchens around, and he went from interim to the head coach of this hyped up football team. Freddie Kitchens wasn't able to adjust schematically and big picture handling all of those personalities in the locker room. That thing fell apart. I think that's what gives me hope in Jordan Love, though. I think Matt LaFleur has seen a lot, and he finally had the opportunity to run his offense with Jordan Love in 2023. It just took a while because of those injuries, right? I mean, they were really piecing things together on the offensive line. They were missing Jones, they're missing Watson. Love's going through his struggles. It was ugly. That Denver game, that Raiders game, man, it was bad. I went on with Colin Cowherd the night of that Raiders game on his podcast, and Colin was out, and I think a lot of people were out on Jordan Love at that point. It was ugly. So it took a while for LaFleur to really find his groove with his quarterback, with this offense. So I think they're going to stay a step ahead, is my point, I suppose. X's and O's wise, because of who they have in charge running the team. And that's the benefit of having such a smart offensive coach locked in. I mean, you can win with a defensive head coach, don't get me wrong. But if you've got a really good offensive coordinator, there's a good chance that he's going to become a head coach somewhere else. If you've got the same offensive mind with the same young quarterback, an offseason like this, you can take a step, right? You can stay ahead of those inevitable developments with whatever the Jim Schwartz of the world throw at you.
I'm looking at their schedule, Green Bay schedule, and it's no joke. So things have definitely, you come out of the gate, you're the defensive coordinator for Green Bay, and you get Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson. Nice offseason. Real nice way to relax in the offseason.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you that it is going to be they're about to experience, Jordan Love's about to experience something he has not experienced yet in the NFL. That doesn't mean he's not going to. Tyler, they're close to, we talk about the core four all the time on here. Green Bay is like, they're right there with the core four. If Jordan Love takes that step, LaFleur and Gutekunst are synced up. I know they don't have traditional ownership in Green Bay, but they have traditional structure. The structure is set for Super Bowls in Green Bay. It's just a matter of his love, the guy. We think we saw enough to say he has it in him. Now bringing out consistently, and they certainly can win the Super Bowl. but Love plays like he does in the middle of the season, and coordinators made some adjustments to him. They're going to be fighting for the playoffs. I mean, that's how fine line the NFL is.
I think that's where you lean into the whole reason you drafted Jordan Love and the whole reason you
Yes,
believed in him. He is,
yes.
look, I get it. I'm not there every practice, and seeing what Devontae Adams saw, the local beat writers saw, I'm sure it was pretty ugly at times early on. But I mean, it's practice, and you're a young quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers looked terrible early on. It's going to happen, and this is why you're the Green Bay Packers. This is why you're different. You take this young raw quarterback who doesn't need to see the field anytime soon, and you let him work through all that, and you give it time, and he's got strengths that you can't coach. The mental toughness to kind of deal with everything that you just detailed, Jim. Like his first start at Lambeau Field, they're down 17-0 to the Saints. It was bad. And he just scores 18 points in the fourth quarter with everything going on around him, all the chaos. There were so many anecdotal moments when you watch a Packers game when things are going wrong and he finds a way to turn it on. And he's got the demeanor where he is not high, he is not low. It is so laser beamed, especially when you kind of take a cross section of all the young quarterbacks in the NFL. Think of how many young quarterbacks it's just life and death, snap to snap, drive to drive, game to game. And it can be fun at times. And you love that energy. You love a guy pumping his fist and chest bumping and going. Jordan Love isn't that. I mean, he's emotionless, but that's perfect. That's ideal for this predicament of, okay, now what you got? What you got? How are you going to respond to whatever defenses throw at you? Uh, just think of some of the best throws we saw out of him. That Dallas game where he's on the back foot, rusher in his face, slinging it sidearmed on a rope. I mean, physically, he can make all the throws. He's got the arm strength. He's got the athleticism to shut guys away and create his own passing windows and do the Mahomesian kind of stuff improvisationally. But I think that this is why they drafted. They knew that this guy. I mean, you can take it all the way back to when he's a teenager and the tragedy he went through with losing his dad. People close to him have kind of pointed that he had to grow up fast. To Utah State that last year, so many guys out, graduation injuries, running around for his life. I remember Mark Ross, who we both know. He's at NFL Network now and scouted forever. I mean, he made that point early with Jordan Love. He said, "Look at Tua Tagovailoa at Alabama, surrounded by 5 stars, clean pocket, receivers open by 5-6 yards, and then look at Jordan Love at Utah State. Like totally different worlds, totally different galaxies. Green Bay knew he could kind of deal with a chaotic pocket and a chaotic life, and that's something you just can't teach and you can't coach. You can coach the other stuff, right? You can teach fundamentals and um, the processing. Maybe you can't necessarily teach, but I think he processed fine. It sure looked like he was able to get through all the progressions. Uh, I agree. This thing could fall apart. It always can. That's always a possibility.
Yeah,
Maybe
falling
that's a
apart
little
is drastic.
strong. That's a little drastic.
That's drastic. Yeah,
I should say they could have a losing season. They could miss the playoffs. You
that's all
can't
I was
predict
saying. It can
injuries and
happen.
how these
That's
games
all.
end. I think they're set for the next 10 plus years. So here's what I want to ask you then. Let's talk contract. Right now, I think that it's really interesting to hear how both sides are framing it. Brian Gutekunst said on, I forget which radio station in Wisconsin, it might have been 97 The Game. He said that he wants a deal done by training camp. It was kind of floated as a loose deadline. But if you're Jordan Love, Jim, you're okay letting this thing go on, right? You're okay with other quarterbacks signing contracts. Jared Goff. Hell, if Dak Prescott, if the Cowboys just throw up their arms and Stephen Jones, who doesn't like to spend money and is more of a penny pincher than his dad, if he gives in and says, okay, whatever, $60 million a year. But Jordan Love now has a case to make to get into the mid-50s to Joe Burrow territory, Justin Herbert territory. Even if Dak doesn't get a deal like that, Tua still needs to get paid. Tua and Jordan Love are both represented by Athletes First, different agents within Athletes First, but you know how they operate. I'm sure Athletes First is looking at this like, okay, who's going to be the floor for the other quarterback? Like, do you sign Jordan Love and then use that as the parameters for Tua to get a little bit more because Tua led the NFL in passing? How does that kind of all go? So you've been in those situations behind the scenes. How do you think the negotiations are going right now, especially when it's a unique situation like that where Tua's going to get paid and he's represented by the same firm as Jordan Love?
So I have to say I have not been in this situation because this is franchise quarterback, young, you drafted him. I have not been a part of this. I've been a part of the Saints when, as an area scout when they were dealing with Breeze restructure, after it was all good. So I was a part of it.
That's
And
true.
all I know, Tyler, the one thing that stays the same no matter what is who has leverage and who does not. It's that simple. We laughed about golf, like when we look, and once again, Jordan Love's going to have the leverage too. All he has to do is they're going to need to see a little bit more before they can go all in. So all you do, Green Bay, there's not many more GMs or teams I trust more as far as structuring deals. And I don't feel like Green Bay is reckless. I think they're going to be fair. I think they'll do something that they won't be tied in forever. I just feel good about the way Green Bay will approach this with Jordan Love. They drafted him. They want him there forever. We all saw the good. This hopefully, just like Tua, where he gets a little upset, but this is the team that invested in him. They want him there. We talked about that. They just invested in Waddle. They need this offense. They know they need every piece to get those stats the same every year, top in the league. But I just think Green Bay you still have to be careful. I mean, you still are based on 1 year production on Jordan Love.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go crazy yet. But you certainly can't.
What's crazy to you?
You can't lock yourself in that you can't lock in. There's no way.
Because I don't think Jordan Love wants to sign for anything more than 4 years because I'm sure they're looking at
That's
the
fine.
television contracts and the gambling money, and he's going to want a second bite at the apple. But I mean, 4 years seems like a good number. Is that too much for Green Bay? You're saying they should do something like 2 years?
No, they have to come strong. Like this is you got to come to show faith. Yeah, you got to show faith. Like you got to show we believe in you. Like what I'm saying is, so maybe I am different than where Green Bay is. I would need to see a little more before I could go all in. I'll just put it to you that way.
Okay, then I'll be David Mogoletta. What's your other option? Sean Clifford?
Don't have it. And that's why Jordan Love has the leverage.
You're going to go sign Ty Detmer and give that a whirl?
100%. And that's why you have to find a way. That's why I said you have to find a way to make sure you aren't locked in forever. You can do that.
Love should play hardball. He should. I'd say 55 a year, 4 years. Joe Burrow money.
And that's the going rate. They have that. They know what the going rate is. Green Bay is ready to pay what the going rate is. They're ready for him. They're not going to lowball him.
What about Tua Tagovailoa's comments after a Miami Dolphins practice? Definitely, it's worth watching the clip. I believe I linked it in our part 1 of the mailbag at golongtd.com, which phenomenal questions, everybody. I'll get to a part 2 and a part 3 over the coming days because try to flesh those out as long as we can because just great questions. But it's linked in there. Tua looked frustrated. He sounded frustrated. I loved the honesty. It was refreshing. He admitted, look, there's players out there who can separate the business from the job, but he isn't like that. You could tell he wants to get a deal done. And the quote that made the rounds obviously is, the market is the market, based off that golf deal. He said he's not concerned, but then he admitted he's a little antsy. So, man, Miami is... We discussed Miami on the podcast a few weeks ago. They want to get a deal done. Tua side is probably having a similar conversation and then some. I mean, he led the NFL in passing. Look at all the quarterbacks who have come before Tua in Miami. Look at what Mike McDaniel has built with that offense. And yet, what are they, like 4-10 in December and January, I believe? Let me get that number right here. Yeah, they're
Well,
4-10 in December or later the last 2 years, including the two playoff losses. He hasn't played well in the cold. A lot of outdoor stadiums there in the AFC. You're going to have to win it unless you just plan on getting the number one seed and hosting all these playoff games till the end of time. That that is a real concern when you're having these conversations, I believe, if you're the Miami Dolphins, right?
yeah, we've talked. Yeah, it's Tua is I say it every time on here. He's the hand of 17 in blackjack. He is. It can be a winning hand, but you need help, and he has proven he needs help, and that's my issue with Tua. Where Jordan Love shows you where you see the big boy stuff where he can just make any play out of anything. That's not Tua. Tua is relied on. He needs Waddle. He needs Hill. He needs a coach who is scheme friendly. So obviously they're going to keep him. I mean, he runs this offense perfectly for them. Like when you have those stats and you're number one, can't get much better. So they don't have it. They're going to get it done. I don't know why I'm surprised. I guess I get it. It's probably just the mental anxiety of I just want it over with and move
Yeah.
on. That's really what it. I mean, we've all been there. I should say we've all been there. I've seen it with these players. You could just
We've all been negotiating $50
no,
million
right. Not that I've
contracts.
but I mean, I've been around. You could just see it with these guys where it's like they just seem they. I've been with a lot of these players when after they sign their contracts, it's just like anything else. Remember how you felt after you took a test in school and it was over? It's that freedom of okay, let's go, it's over with. That's how they feel. It's over. Now I can move on and get to what I like to do is play football.
I think that's what it was. It was more of an exasperation, thinking about it, probably talking about it so much privately with his agents, with his family, with his friends, with his teammates, just wanting it to be over with because he loves playing for this coach. He loves playing with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I love that Miami knows what Miami is. And you draft the fastest running back, Jalen Wright, in the last 2 years, who joins the two other fastest running backs in the NFL, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane. You've got Waddle, you've got Hill. I mean, you're leaning into a real identity. I think there's a lot of teams and a lot of offenses around the NFL that are kind of searching for that identity. Um, and they don't really know who they're going to be. I mean, remember how much we talked about Atlanta last year and
Yes,
the identity that they had on
yes.
paper. It looked great on paper, not so much in reality. So
I fell for the everybody's undefeated this time of year.
yeah, yeah,
You did a story. I'm blaming you. Every gambler
yeah.
can blame somebody. I'll blame you. You did a story. Okay, go ahead.
I'll take it. I'll take it. That's fine. But if you're the Dolphins, you just know that you want to operate at this breakneck speed, and that running game is so key. I think that is maybe an underrated subplot to things falling apart at the end of these seasons. Like they just don't run the ball as well, and it seems like even Mike McDaniel got away from that run a little bit in that Chiefs playoff game. You just need that thing to be cooking to open up those passing windows off of the RPOs. And then Tua's got to hit him, and Tua's got to make the plays. And Tua looks like he's what, 15 pounds lighter? I don't know how much weight he lost.
Yeah.
Does that matter? I know that's such the new hairstyle. Maybe that matters. Maybe the hairstyle matters more than anything.
No, look, Tua, Lamar, the weight stuff doesn't. No, none of that matters. What I love though, Tyler, what I wanted to touch on, we were talking about Miami they have what you were talking about, how they draft speed and what they know exactly. That's when you know. I'm telling you, that's when you know you're rolling as a franchise. It's when you feel like you have the core four in place, and we know what we want at every position. Boom, boom, boom. It's not just speed. They have other things they want at these positions as well. But when he paid Waddle like that, he can't lose. Tyreek Hill is a loose cannon with his off the field stuff. I mean, there's always a chance with him that something might not. So that I think there's a reason they paid Waddle that money. Where look, we can't. We need they're special. They're the nightmares. It's real simple. I always say like pay attention. What is the defensive coordinator? Who is he terrified of? Like we talked about, the Green Bay defensive coordinator is Hurts and Anthony Richardson. Not fun to start the season. But when you play Miami, sleepless. It's sleepless. It's endless speed. It's endless formations. It's mismatches. It's like a bunch of 3-point shooters everywhere with with a point guard who's just creating. That's what Tua is.
Devon Achane, he averaged 7.8 yards a carry last
He's
year.
so fast.
He's 800 yards on 103 carries. And then we've talked about Jalen Wright and everything he did at Tennessee to add him into the mix. Tyreek Hill, before his injuries at the end of the year, I mean, he was the MVP of the league.
They know what they want. They and Tyler, I wanted the last thing, or not last, but another thing I wanted to touch on before we forget, because I was thinking about with Miami, but I heard a quote from an assistant coach that I love this week. This coach, he's my new favorite coach now. His name is Chris Forrester, the offensive line coach for the 49ers. Now, he has a history. There was some history in Miami. We can all look that up. But he said in a press conference that basically he basically says to his he tells his front office and coaching staff, draft guys that can score. Draft the guys that can score. I'll get the linemen later, and I can coach and find the linemen. And I know what he means. He's not saying don't draft linemen, but he's saying the value right now, the rules are set up to score. Go get those guys. They're hard to, if you can find all that speed, get it. And I'll get that offensive line right. And then you look at what the 49ers do, right? They have Ayuk, they have Samuel. Who do they draft? One of my favorite receivers in the draft. They took Pearsall. So they did what he said. Like, they just keep these McDaniel, the 49ers, they keep loading up. And you talked about that, how you said you wanted the Bills to just go for it, load up on offense. And you know what? I'm not necessarily saying I love the Bills pick Coleman as far as a load up guy. And I thought there were some other receivers, but they did it. They're surrounding the offense with different pieces and weapons that they see. So basically what I'm saying is everybody's catching on, and they're paying the receivers because the value now is they're getting in the end zone. The rules are set up to score.
So here's the quote from 49ers offensive line coach Chris Forrester, quote, invest in guys that touch the ball, guys that can touch the ball and score touchdowns. And then there's a range of guys, second, third, fourth round, fifth round even, that will find starting offensive linemen. At some point, you can draft them. Yeah, you draft Trent Williams. You pick a draft where you're getting a difference maker, but there's guys that can make a difference that touch the ball well into the second, third, fourth rounds, or second, third rounds at least, and definitely in the first round. That guy that touches the ball, it makes a huge difference in the game. The right guard makes a difference. We've talked about it before, but that's where we're able to find fourth and fifth round draft. So it's like he's basically saying, just give me bodies. I'll figure out the rest. I know how to coach linemen. And the value of an offensive line coach, there it is again. We've talked about it several times. The Aaron Kromer here in Buffalo, one of the best. Chris Forrester, there's a reason that he's getting jobs after everything that he did. Like we said, Google it yourself. There's no substitute for just these gnarly, they probably got to dip a chew underneath their lip. They probably got a rap sheet to some degree off the field. Who knows what these guys went through? Kromer went through his stuff too in Buffalo. You were around then with the beach chair, but these are some of the best teachers that you'll find in the sport, and they'll figure it out. So load up on weapons, trade for them, draft them, invest in them, and he's saying you can get by. I'll figure out the right guard.
Well, I love how he basically did say, except unless there's possibly a Trent Williams in there.
Yeah.
Like every now and then, if there is somebody that's the rare Hall of Famer, I will take him. But if it's not a Hall of Fame player, you could wait till the fourth, fifth round, and then we can.
Man.
But no, I really believe, I love that I like that he said that. And what you just touched on the value, every coach will tell you that. Head coach will tell you the value of hiring an offensive line coach. It's such a hard position to teach. You're teaching 5 guys to operate as one, and every position is so different. It's really the most unique. They're the most unique. You want to do I'm telling you, Tyler, a book on offensive line coaches would be scary. You already know it. They probably don't. But those guys, their stories, their lives, it's just different dealing with what they do with their room. They deal with so many different people. Where as a receiving coach, you might deal with 2 or 3 guys every year. The room's kind of rotating, possibly. That offensive line, those 5 guys, you might have those guys for year after year after year. I mean, you get to know their families, and it becomes such a tight Yeah, it's a fraternity. That's a frat. The offensive line, like those off, they don't want like people like me. I never position. They don't want me in their room. Like they look at like when you come in the front, they're like, oh yeah, I know you're front office, but man, you never played offensive line.
That's my promise to our subscribers that go along here on we're recording June 7th then. A story on the ecosystem of an offensive line room this season. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, Hank Fraley in Detroit, he's got, he's the same dude, right?
We had
Raspy
Hank Fraley.
voice, just wants to kick ass. It's its own world within the NFL where they just keep to themselves and meetings are different. The job is different. Yeah, and it's there's like I don't think they're sending freshmen up to grab a piece of rust from a bus in the woods like we did at Ellicottville Central back in the day. But I'm sure there's like some hazing rituals kind of baked in there as well. You got to break in. It's like a fraternity, right? You got to do something to be
They don't
accepted.
want it's just watch during practices. I mean, when the quarterbacks are working on their accuracy drills, thrown into the ball net, it's and then the offensive line. It could be like a special teams period. So offensive line and quarterbacks usually aren't on special teams. So you'll see the quarterbacks doing some accuracy drills, thrown into a net. But then you see the offensive line, they have to do like slide and hand, like punch, it's just nonstop, just like grunt work. And that's why, like, if you haven't done it, they really don't want to talk to you. It's almost like being a parent. If you aren't one, don't come to us. Don't talk to us.
And you're 320, 330 pounds. I get it. It's not the two-a-days of yesteryear, but you're out there 90-degree heat in training camp and it's humid. To carry around that weight day to day, it's just thinking of like Josh Sitton with the Packers, man. One of the largest human beings I've ever been around in my life, just sitting in his locker and thinking, how do you move out there in a field for 2.5 hours every day in training camp?
I can't believe you brought him up. I can remember walking by him at Central Florida when I was scouting him on the. I was at a game because they have one of the awesome stadiums, and nobody talks about, but they're one of the first kind of on-campus stadiums in Florida, and they have alcohol, which is not. Anyway, it's a good time down there. And I remember pregame walking. Pregame scouts are walking around and checking out all the guys you're looking at. And I can remember stopping, and we're all around big guys all the time in the NFL, but he's one you stopped on. It was just, yeah, I know what you mean. Like you just look at him like, oh yeah, he's sturdy. Like nobody's getting around that.
He's got a base.
You're not getting around that. And then he could move, and then he's nasty. I missed on him. I missed on him. I wasn't high enough on him. I thought I was a little concerned. I was off on him. That's one guy that I sat there and looked at and couldn't believe. I was a little hard on him. I remember he was better than I gave him credit for.
I can see where a scout could miss on Josh Sitton though out of college because he's not built like, I mean, all offensive linemen are huge, but man, he had a belly on him and you wonder, can he move? Are you going to be nimble enough in the NFL to pull? And he was, man, he knew how to carry his weight.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure if he could sustain blocks and really finish. And I thought maybe could he just be a powerful guy and fall off blocks? He was everything. He was good. He was legit.
As a young beat guy at the Journal Sentinel, I remember you walk up to Josh Sitton and you just knew you better ask a good question because he's not here for bullshit. Like he's gonna be a straight shooter. Ain't got time for any of that. I just love that about him and TJ Lang in there. Different breed. I mean, to bring it full circle on those Packers, then how good can Jordan Love be? The headline of this podcast. Where does this go?
That's what we're paying attention to this year. We saw the potential to be top 5, top everything that you want, everything that they see. It's there. Now you got to do it again, though. That's the key. You got to do it again and in the playoffs to really solidify what we think we saw. Because, like I said, I still think he's in for a tougher season than he's seen before. But we know he has. You did a great job of pointing out his background. He's built for this as far as his mindset. He's mentally ready for it. He took it on. He went through a little toughness last year and early in the season. you can't not be excited for Green Bay. I just think the division's tougher and coordinators are going to be a little tougher on them.
I think about just put yourself into Jordan Love's cleats too, where every day you're not seeing the field. You've got a 4-time MVP. He's 1 and 2 of them ahead of you, and Aaron Rodgers. You finally do play a little bit at Arrowhead. It ain't pretty. You're starting to get written off as a bust. How could the Green Bay Packers take a quarterback when you've got Aaron Rodgers? It's deafening on the airwaves, and it continues. And then you go back to waiting, right? And you wait some more, and you wait, and Aaron Rodgers gets paid, and now you're wondering if the Packers even believe in you. And then you respond to that by going out there and busting your ass in California with Steve Calhoun, with all of your old college teammates that we've talked to here go along. Then you show up at OTAs. Aaron Rodgers is blowing it off. You're the starter. And now you're putting it on the field in a way that, okay, now you're seeing some dividends. But I just feel like it's been such a slow, steady build that he's going to understand the magnitude of every opportunity, every game. And this isn't a flash in the pan. I can't see this just coasting on by and Green Bay's looking for another quarterback after this contract. I think you're paying somebody that is going to keep putting in the time and represent the team, be the face of everything that you want. 1,000%.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
Okay. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Thank you so much for reading at golongtd.com. As referenced, many features coming down the pipe over the coming weeks, months. I'm going to be at Buffalo Bills minicamp this coming week, Jim. So we'll have some eyeballs on the local football club. Should be interesting.
I'll look forward to your X clips of the route running and whatever you decide to. Yes, I need to see what we're going to dissect from pre-practice. What is the pre-practice allowed? 20. What do you get? Like 20 minutes to film, or is it longer?
Well,
how's that work?
I'm not sure team to team. I mean, I was at the Jaguars practice there and the Texans, and I think a lot of teams they're open. I mean, you can
They're
watch
just
the full
open, they're
practice,
open, wide open. Okay,
and you can film certain periods.
that's what I
But
wondered.
yeah, it's man, if you learn anything covering this game for a while, we've all made the mistake. Like, I'm sure I could go back and find old OTA stories from the Packers beat where such and such is in the best shape of his life and making plays, is in line for a breakout season. You have to take all of these stories, all of these tweets, all of these clips with a mountain of salt, not a grain, a mountain. Because, I mean, hell, Alex Green, he's right in this podcast feed. If you can listen, if you haven't listened yet, please do. Unbelievable conversation about everything he's been through since his playing days. We laughed about it at some point. I mean, after Green Bay drafted Eddie Lacy and Jonathan Franklin, which his story of draft day is hilarious. He's with DeJuan Harris, and they're like, "Oh shit, like this is terrible. We're out of here." But after that, he was the number 1 running back at OTAs. Okay, like depth charts and everything. It doesn't really mean a lot. So maybe you can pick up on something. But I mean, I saw Stephon Diggs getting dragged on social media for one play where he was covered. The practice I was at, Stephon Diggs looked incredible for the Texans. So you don't go hard one way or the other. Like, wait till camp, start. I mean, you can't. I mean, you can have analysis. Don't get me wrong, but maybe a body of work is necessary before saying such and such is going to set the world on fire. Look at Jordan Love, right? How many times did we hear Jordan Love looks abysmal in practice? And I'm sure he did at times, but he showed some stuff at some practices too. And then he did it on game day. And now he's going to win a Super Bowl and be Super Bowl MVP. So, lock in that bet right now, Jim. You might as well just pull up Caesars and punch it in. I hope you didn't bet on the Mavericks last night.
No, I did not. But that was like almost like you were getting a free. Are you getting a little check from Caesars? Why did you use them specifically?
I don't know. I think that's the one. If I do gamble, which isn't often, I'm trying to get out of that. It's just for whatever reason, it's the Caesars app. I'm sure there's better ones out there, but that's the one that I've used. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should not have used them by name. They, nobody will ever. Knock on wood. I never want to have a gambling app like sponsor anything ever at Go Long because nobody criticizes gambling, all media companies, because they're getting tons of money from these apps. Like it's like we should be able to openly talk about what is gambling
We
is
talk
doing
about beer. It's the
to
same
the
thing as
leagues, to
beer.
this,
It's all the
right?
same.
I mean, it's ruining a lot of lives all over the country. I mean, it is kind of gross that Roger
Just
Goodell
like
and the owners are just
just
swimming in
like
these waters
alcohol.
now in this
Just
muck.
like alcohol. Just like
Yeah.
Miller Lite and Bud Light have sponsored the Super Bowl every year. Like there's no difference between gambling and alcohol. I've said it
Right.
forever. The casino is a dive bar. Trust me. No difference.
But yeah, that was ugly last night, huh? Kind of a blah game.
Well, the NBA has had a rough go of it. I know you and I both like the NBA, but there's just not enough competitive good games. It's almost becoming like tennis. Like it's like, hey, we're not going to get this one. We'll get the next game. Like it's just, and then you get to a game seven. It's I hope it doesn't because there's so many superstars in this. You hope for some better. I think we'll get better games. That was a tough one for Dallas. All the hype was on Boston. I mean, all the hype was on them. They're getting hyped up way too much. Wink, wink.
Yeah. Boy, the Caitlin Clark discussion kind of took a few twists and turns since we discussed ourselves here, huh?
I'm glad we talked about it because I'm over it now. It's a shame. They're
I
just
think we
playing
need
basketball.
about 50 more think pieces on Caitlin Clark before.
It's ridiculous. Like it's ridiculous. It's so sad. Girl, she's a superstar. Like just let her
Yeah,
be. Let her be.
I totally agree. Yeah, I'll bite my tongue. It is ridiculous. But okay, let's sign off right there. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll catch you next time.